Hello you. Didn't see you there. I'm Jordan. Welcome back to Behind the Reel. This time on a very special franchise that I just need to get ready for. Give me a second. That's better. So today's franchise is Back to the Future. Now, we're going to be going across the space-time continuum and documenting the entire franchise. Come with me, shall you?
Chapter 1. If you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. Back to the Future began development in the early 1980s with director Robert Zemeckis and writer Bob Gale, working to bring their ambitious scientific comedy to life, although Michael J. Fox was the filmmaker's first choice to play Marty McFly. His commitment to the television sitcom Family Ties initially made him unavailable. Fox's television commitments prevented him from accepting the role at the time. Instead, Universal executive Sid Seinberg recommended Eric Stoltz, after being impressed by his performance in the drama The Mask, leading to Stoltz officially being cast as Marty when production began in November 1984. As filming progressed, it became increasingly clear that Stoltz's interpretation of Marty McFly differed from what the filmmakers had envisioned. A dedicated method actor, Stoltz approached the role with a serious dramatic intensity that contrasted with the light-hearted comedy at the heart of the film. Co-star Leah Thompson later recalled that although Stoltz was funny in real life, he wasn't bringing the comedy energy the role required, while Christopher Lloyd agreed that the performance lacked the humour needed to make Marty truly connect with audiences. Stoltz reportedly remained in character throughout filming, insisting that cast and crew call him Marty on set. His commitment even affected action scenes, with reports claiming that during repeated takes of the cafeteria confrontation, he accidentally injured co-star Thomas F. Wilson's collarbone. After several weeks of production, Robert Zemeckis made the difficult decision to replace Stoltz with Michael J. Fox, whose performance ultimately became one of the most iconic in film history, of course. The story of the film remained largely the same as the version audiences know today. Marty McFly accidentally travels back to 1955 in the time-travelling DeLorean created by the eccentric Doc Brown. While stranded in the past, Marty must ensure that his parents fall in love or risk erasing his own existence before finding a way to return to 1985. After several weeks of filming, Robert Zemeckis realised that Eric Stoltz's performance did not match the light-hearted comedic tone he envisioned. Although Stoltz was a talented, dramatic actor, the filmmakers felt the character needed more energetic and a comedic presence. With no other options, Stoltz was dismissed from the production. For many years, footage from Eric Stoltz's version of Back to the Future remained unseen in the public. In 2008, Bob Gale stated on the Opie and Anthony show that the filmmakers were reluctant to release the footage because they didn't want to embarrass Stoltz. However, this was later clarified in the 2015 documentary Back in Time, where Robert Zemeckis confirmed that the original footage still exists and had not been destroyed, leaving open the possibility that more material could be released in the future. Although Eric Stoltz's version of Back to the Future was permanently cancelled, several clips eventually surfaced in 2010. The film's 25th anniversary Blu-ray and DVD release included both silent and restored scenes featuring Stoltz as part of the behind-the-scenes documentary. When Back to the Future was finally released in 1985 with Michael J. Fox, it became a critical and commercial success, of course. Unfortunately, Eric Stoltz never got to see that as a character.
Chapter 2. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're going to see some serious shit. Bringing Back to the Future to the big screen was far from easy. Throughout the early 1980s, Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale struggled to convince Hollywood studios to finance their time travel adventure film. Many executives believed the screenplay was too wholesome compared with the raunchy teen comedies dominating cinemas at the time. While Disney rejected the idea because it felt the storyline involving Marty's mother falling in love with him was too controversial, the pair's reputation also worked against them. as their previous films I Want to Hold Your Hand and Used Cars failed at the box office, and their screenplay for 1941 had received a disappointing reception. Everything changed after Zemeckis directed the hit adventure film Romancing the Stone in 1984. The movie's success transformed his reputation overnight, and studios that had once turned down Back to the Future suddenly wanted to make it. Steven Spielberg, who we did a previous filmmakers episode on, who had admired the screenplay from the very beginning, joined the project as executive producer, and Universal Pictures officially gave the film the green light. Even then, Universal President Sid Sheinberg requested several changes to the script, including renaming Professor Brown to the more memorable Doc Brown, replacing Doc's chimpanzee with a dog, and removing Marty's original backstory involving video piracy. One of the biggest battles behind the scenes centred on the film's title. Sheinberg believed Back to the Future was confusing and suggested changing the film's title to Spaceman from Pluto, inspired by a joke in the film involving the Peabody family's comic book. Rather than openly disagreeing with the studio president, Spielberg cleverly responded with a memo thanking him for what everyone assumed was a joke. Embarrassed, Sheinberg never mentioned the proposed title again, allowing Back to the Future to keep the name that would eventually become iconic. Around the same time, the filmmakers also abandoned the original idea of using a refrigerator as a time machine. Take note, Indiana Jones 4. Instead, choosing the futuristic DeLorean sports car with its distinctive gull-wing doors, making it believable that people in 1955 would mistake it for a flying saucer. Budget limitations also forced significant changes to the story's climax. Early drafts featured Marty harnessing the power of a nuclear bomb test in the Nevada desert to return to 1985. But the sequence would have required expensive location filming and large-scale visual effects, replacing the nuclear explosion with a lightning strike at Hill Valley's clock tower instead. Dramatically reduced production costs while also strengthening the film's central themes. The clock tower became an essential part of the story, giving Doc Brown a much more active role in helping Marty return to the future during one of the film's most suspenseful and memorable moments. Casting proved just as complicated as developing the screenplay. Michael J. Fox was always Robert Zemeckis' first choice to play Marty McFly, but his starring role in Family Ties prevented him from accepting the part. Eric Stoltz was cast instead, and filming began in November 1984. However, after 6 weeks of production, Zemeckis realised Stoltz's serious method acting approach was at odds with the light-hearted comedy the film required. After screening a rough cut for Steven Spielberg and producer Bob Gale, the filmmakers made the difficult decision to replace Stoltz. Michael J. Fox was finally released to join the production, although only on the condition that Family Ties remained his priority, forcing him to work exhausting days on television before filming Back to the Future late into the night. And yes, his sleep was terrible. Despite the demanding schedule, Fox quickly made the role his own. He even took extra guitar lessons to ensure his performance of Johnny B. Good looked authentic. and also for you film lovers out there, the teacher that actually helped him learn the guitar for that sequence is also in an earlier sequence where they play in a sports gym with a cameo from Huey Lewis. While his energetic stage movements were inspired by rock legends including Chuck Berry, Pete Townsend, Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton, early preview audiences loved the film, convincing Universal to move its release forward to the lucrative 4th of July weekend in 1985. Combined with Alan Silvestri's unforgettable orchestral score and Huey Lewis and the News's hit song The Power of Love, and also Back in Time, Back to the Future became a worldwide phenomenon. It topped the American box office for 12 consecutive weeks, earned nearly $400 million worldwide, and secured its place as one of the most beloved science fiction films ever made. Although the demanding production schedule pushed the cast and crew to their limits, many have described Back to the Future as one of the most enjoyable films they have ever worked on. Chapter 3. Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads. Following the enormous success of Back to the Future in 1985, a sequel was almost inevitable. Universal Pictures was eager to continue the franchise, and Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale returned to develop the next chapter after confirming that Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd would reprise their roles as Marty McFly and Doc Brown. Inspired by years of fan mail asking what happened after the first film's cliffhanger ending, the filmmakers decided to continue the story exactly where it left off. Their new adventure would take Marty and Doc into the future, where a stolen sports almanac would allow Biff Tannen to rewrite history and create a dark, alternate version of 1985 that Marty would have to undo. Bob Gale's original screenplay took the story in a very different direction. Instead of returning to 1955, the plot centered on 1967, where Biff would give the sports almanac to his younger self during the height of the hippie era. Marty would disguise himself in a bell-bottom trousers and tie-dye clothing disguise while trying to stop history from changing, once again risking his own existence by accidentally interfering with his parents' lives. However, when Robert Zemeckis returned from directing Who Framed Roger Rabbit, he suggested replacing the 1967 with a return back to 1955, allowing audiences to revisit the events from the original movie from an entirely new perspective. That idea alone became one of the sequel's defining moments. As the story expanded, the filmmakers realised it had become too ambitious for a single film. Zemeckis wanted to include an additional adventure set in the American Old West, but combining all three time periods resulted in a screenplay that ran well over 2.5 hours and carried an estimated budget of around $60 million. Rather than cutting major scenes, Universal agreed to an unusual solution: split the story into 2 films. And with that, Back to the Future Part 2 and Part 3 would be filmed back to back over an 11-month production schedule, making them among the first major Hollywood sequels to be produced simultaneously. But not every member of the original cast returned. Crispin Glover, who played George McFly in the first movie, entered negotiations seeking a significantly higher salary along with script and director approval. When an agreement couldn't be reached, the production moved forward without him. George McFly was written out of much of the story, while actor Jeffrey Wiseman was cast as a replacement. Through careful camera angles, prosthetic makeup and recycled footage from the first movie, and clever visual tricks, Wiseman was made to resemble Glover as closely as possible. Glover later filed a successful lawsuit over the unauthorized use of his likeness, leading to the new Screen Actors Guild rules protecting actors from having their appearances recreated without their permission. Filming began in February 1989 and presented enormous technical challenges. Nearly every main cast member had to portray multiple versions of themselves at different ages, often spending each morning having prosthetic makeup applied before stepping out onto the set. Michael J. Fox alone returned to play Marty McFly alongside his future family, including his future son Marty Jr. and his daughter Marlene, while Thomas F. Wilson portrayed several generations of the Tannen family. Industrial Light and Magic, or ILM for short, developed a groundbreaking motion control camera system known as Vista Glide, allowing Fox to appear on screen multiple times in the same shot. Combined with early digital wire removal for the hoverboard sequences, Back to the Future Part 2 became one of the most technically innovative films of its era. When Back to the Future Part 2 released, audiences were amazed by its imaginative vision of the future. Rather than attempting to predict technology accurately, Bob Gale deliberately created an optimistic and entertaining version of 2015, filled with flying cars, self-lacing shoes, video calls, hoverboards, and food hydrators. Although not every prediction came true, except the Cubs in the playoffs, that became true, many ideas proved surprisingly close to modern life, particularly the rise of large flat-screen TVs, wearable technology, and people using multiple screens at once. Production on Part 2 wrapped in August 1989. But there was little time to celebrate, as just weeks later the cast and crew immediately began filming Back to the Future Part 3, bringing the ambitious trilogy to its conclusion. Although Back to the Future Part 2 was a commercial success, it failed to match the extraordinary box office performance of the original film, earning only half of what its predecessor got worldwide in its total. Back to the Future Part 3 would go on to earn even less, leading to some critics and industry observers to question whether Universal's ambitious decision to film both sequels back to back had been the right choice. Many viewers also found the second film noticeably darker than the original, with its alternate 1985 dominated by the corrupt Biff Tannen, who also screams Donald Trump archetypes. Thomas F. Wilson, who played Biff, defended this creative decision, explaining that the story needed to take risks and become darker in order to remain exciting, rather than simply repeating the formula of the first one. Behind the scenes, director Robert Zemeckis later admitted that the demanding production schedule left him with far less time than he would have liked to edit and refine Part 2, often flying between the Part 3 set and the editing room while surviving on very little sleep. That sounds like a running theme for this franchise. Another major source of criticism was the film's ending. Rather than telling a complete story, Back to the Future Part 2 concluded with a dramatic cliffhanger before immediately teasing scenes from Part 3. Co-writer Bob Gale later revealed that he had argued with Universal over the film's marketing, believing audiences should have been told in advance that they were watching the middle chapter of a trilogy, rather than expecting another self-contained sequel. As a result, many moviegoers left the cinema disappointed, and reviews at the time reflected that frustration. However, opinions have changed drastically over the decades. Viewed today as part of the complete trilogy, Back to the Future Part 2 is widely praised for its ambitious storytelling, groundbreaking visual effects, and imaginative vision of the future. What was once considered the most divisive entry in the series has since earned a reputation as one of the franchise's most creative and influential films.
Chapter 4. Doc, the red line's about to blow! Following the completion of Back to the Future Part 2, the cast and crew wasted no time moving on to the trilogy's final chapter. Just 4 weeks later, production on the Back to the Future Part 3 began, taking filmmakers away from Universal Studios and into the rugged landscapes of Sonora, California. Rather than relying on the familiar Hill Valley backlot, the production built an entire new version of the town authentically to recreate the American Old West. The location was chosen because it featured a functioning 19th century railway line and a genuine steam locomotive, both of which became central to the film's dramatic finale. One of the most significant additions to the cast was Mary Steenburgen, who was chosen to play Clara Clayton, the school teacher who would become Doc Brown's love interest. Steenburgen initially hesitated to accept the role, but her children, who were fans of the original film, encouraged her to join the production. Her chemistry with Christopher Lloyd added a new emotional dimension to the trilogy, giving audiences a chance to see a more vulnerable and romantic side of Doc Brown. Lloyd later admitted that he developed a genuine admiration for his co-star, and the film even featured his first on-screen kiss after a career spanning more than 30 films. How crazy is that? Unlike hectic productions of the first two films, Part 3 offered the cast a much more relaxed atmosphere, with Michael J. Fox no longer juggling his demanding family ties schedule. He finally had time to enjoy life on location, even organising fishing trips during the breaks in filming. The set became effectively known as Club Hill Valley thanks to its recreational activities, which included volleyball, miniature golf, and a shooting range. Cast and crew members often hurried through lunch so they could spend the rest of their break enjoying the facilities, creating a close-knit and enjoyable working environment despite the demanding production. Creating the spectacular finale of Back to the Future Part 3 required several specifically modified versions of the iconic DeLorean Time Machine. Different vehicles were built for specific scenes, including off-road models powered by Volkswagen racing engines to handle the rugged desert terrain, while another DeLorean was fitted with the custom railway wheels so it could safely travel along the tracks during the film's climactic chase. These practical modifications allowed the filmmakers to perform many of the stunts for real, giving the action sequences a tense sense of realism that would have been difficult to achieve, of course, with visual effects. The unforgettable train sequence was filmed at Railway Town in 1879, State Historic Park in Jamestown, California, which is when it's set, where the production used authentic 19th century steam locomotives alongside detailed miniature models and practical effects. Before production began, the filmmakers also sought and received permission from the legendary actor Clint Eastwood to reference his name in the film, as Mary adopts the alias Clint Eastwood while travelling through the Old West. Eastwood's added approval adds an extra touch of authenticity to the Western setting, helping Back to the Future 3 pay tribute to the classic cowboy films that inspired its story. While the atmosphere on set was relaxed, director Robert Zemeckis was under enormous pressure as Part 3 was being filmed. Back to the Future Part 2 was simultaneously entering its final stages of post-production. Zemeckis travelled between the railway set in Sonora and the soundstage studios in Burbank, working long hours with very little sleep to complete both films on schedule. The spectacle train sequence also proved technically challenging. Several specific modified DeLoreans were constructed for different stunts, including one fitted with railway wheels. For the most dangerous scenes, the production reversed footage to protect Michael J. Fox from filming directly in front of a moving steam locomotive. Production wrapped on Back to the Future Part 3 in January 1990, and the film reached cinemas just 6 months after the release of Part 2. Although each film earned less at the box office than the original, the trilogy as a whole became Universal Pictures' greatest success, grossing close to $1 billion worldwide against a production budget of combined of $100 million. More than 40 years after Marty McFly first travelled through time, Back to the Future remains one of the cinema's most beloved, influential franchises, continuing to inspire new generations of fans and filmmakers around the world.
We are currently experiencing a systems failure in our security network. Time travel volunteers, please stand by. Dr. Brown will be with you in just a moment, and we will begin preparation for our journey one day into the future. The new 8-passenger DeLorean is currently running its pre-time travel systems checks, so please stand by.
Chapter 5. Welcome to the Institute of Future Technology. Following the success of the Back to the Future trilogy, Universal Studios looked for a way to extend the adventure beyond the cinema. The result was Back to the Future: The Ride, an ambitious motion simulator attraction that served as an unofficial mini-sequel to Back to the Future Part 3. First teased in the 1990s TV special The Secrets of the Back to the Future trilogy, the attraction finally opened its doors at Universal Studios Florida on May 2nd, 1991, before it later arrived at Universal Studios Hollywood in 1993 and Universal Studios Japan in 2001. Allowing millions of fans to step inside the world of Doc Brown and Back to the Future and experience time travel for themselves. The attraction placed guests into the roles of volunteers at Doc Brown's newly established Institute of Future Technology. During the pre-show, Christopher Lloyd returned as Doc Brown, explaining that the Institute had developed a fleet of 8-passenger DeLorean Time Machines. However, chaos quickly erupted when Biff Tannen, once again played by Thomas F. Wilson, stole one of the vehicles and escapes through time. With Doc trapped in his laboratory, the guests become part of the story, boarding a larger DeLorean to pursue Biff across history before he can alter the timeline and threaten the future of the universe. The ride itself combined motion simulation with a giant IMAX dome screen to create the illusion of high-speed time travel. Guests raced through futuristic Hill Valley in 2015, the Ice Age, prehistoric Earth with a giant T-Rex, and even into the heart of an active volcano before finally catching up with Biff. Each ride vehicle moved in sync with the film, using hydraulic pistons that tilted, lifted, and shook the cabin, convincing riders that they were flying alongside the DeLorean at 88 miles per hour. At the conclusion of the adventure, Biff was safely returned to the present, while Doc congratulated the volunteers for saving the space-time continuum once again. Although Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale were not directly involved in developing this attraction, they approved the portrayal of Doc Brown after reviewing the script for the pre-show. The ride also reunited several key members of the original film series, including Christopher Lloyd, Thomas F. Wilson, and composer Alan Silvestri, whose music helped recreate the atmosphere of the trilogy. Michael J. Fox, however, declined to film new scenes as Marty McFly due to his busy schedule, but archive footage from the films was incorporated into the attraction, ensuring his character still played a role in the experience. Fans waiting to board the ride were surrounded by references to the Back to the Future universe. The queue featured detailed props, scientific diagrams, hoverboards, and displays from Doc Brown's Institute of Future Technology, making it feel as though visitors had stepped directly into the world of the films. Outside the Orlando attraction, the original DeLorean Time Machine and Doc's Time Train from Part 3 were displayed for guests to admire, becoming popular photo opportunities that are still there to this day. The ride itself also included numerous hidden Easter eggs and in-jokes, including references to Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, as well as familiar locations from Hill Valley recreated specifically for the attraction. However, after entertaining guests for more than 15 years, Back to the Future the ride closed its doors at Universal Studios Florida and Hollywood in 2007 to make way for the Simpsons ride, while the Japanese version remained open until 2016 before itself got replaced by Despicable Me Minion Mayhem. Well, at least we can say that America chose it better. Although the attraction no longer exists, it remains one of the most fondly remembered theme park experiences ever created. Its ride film, though, however, has since been preserved on several Back to the Future home movie releases, allowing fans to relive the adventure and ensuring that this unique continuation of the trilogy remains an enduring part of the franchise's legacy.
Chapter 6. Great Scott, I know this is heavy. Although Back to the Future the film trilogy concluded in 1990, the franchise continued to thrive across television, theme parks, video games, comics, and special anniversary projects. Rather than producing a traditional fourth film, Universal expanded the series through a variety of spin-offs that allowed fans to revisit the world of Marty McFly and Doc Brown in new ways. While many of these stories exist outside of the official continuity, they have helped keep the franchise alive for decades. The first major continuation was Back to the Future the Animated Series, which premiered in 1991. Set after the events of Part 3, the show followed Doc Brown, Clara, and their sons, Jules and Vernie, I think that's whatever. As they embarked on time-travelling adventures alongside Marty McFly, Christopher Lloyd returned as Doc Brown in live-action introductions and closing segments, where he often demonstrated real scientific experiments. Thomas Wilson reprised his role as Biff Tannen, and several members of the Tannen family tree. Although the series embraced a much more comedic Saturday morning cartoon style, its exaggerated adventures and contradictions with the films have led most fans to view it as an alternate timeline rather than an official sequel. In 2010, though, the franchise did return with a much more story-driven format with Back to the Future the Game, developed by Telltale Games. Set only a few months after Part 3, the episodic adventure saw Marty McFly searching for the missing Doc Brown after the DeLorean mysteriously returned without him. Along the way, Marty travelled back to 1931, encountered a young Emmett Brown, and faced off against Kid Tannen. While navigating multiple alternate timelines, franchise co-creator Bob Gale was heavily involved in the game's development, and he even referred to it as Back to the Future 4, although he later clarified that it should be viewed as an authentic continuation rather than part of the trilogy's official continuity. The game's success also inspired the comic adaptation Citizen Brown. The franchise celebrated its 30th anniversary in 2015 with several new projects. Christopher Lloyd returned once again as Doc Brown in the short film Doc Brown Saves the World, which explored the consequences of his continued experiments with time travel and introduced ideas involving artificial intelligence and a bleak future set in 2045. IDW Publishing launched an ongoing Back to the Future comic series, co-written by Bob Gale, exploring untold stories from across the timeline, including Doc Brown's involvement in the Manhattan Project, Biff's rise to power in an alternate 1985, and the adventures of Doc, Clara, Jules and Vernie aboard the time train. Although these comics are officially considered expanded universe stories rather than strict canon, they have become some of the richest additions to the franchise's lore. The celebrations continue throughout 2015 with several memorable appearances that delighted longtime fans. Nike finally released the self-lacing Air Mag shoes first imagined in Back to the Future Part 2, accompanied by a promotional short starring Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown, proceeds supporting the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's research. And on the 21st of October in 2015, better known as Back to the Future Day, Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd reunited in character on Jimmy Kimmel Live, arriving on stage in the DeLorean to discover that real 2015 was very different from the one they had visited in the films. More than 3 decades after the original film premiered, these projects demonstrated that Back to the Future remained more than a film trilogy. Through games, obviously, comics, attractions and reunions, the adventures of Marty, McFly and Doc Brown continue to capture the imagination of audiences, of course, around the world.
Chapter 7. This one's for the dreamers. More than 35 years after the original film premiered, Back to the Future made the leap from the big screen to the West End stage, with Back to the Future the Musical, premiering in Manchester in 2020 before transferring to London's West End at the Adelphi Theatre and later Broadway. The production brought Marty McFly, Doc Brown and the iconic DeLorean to live audiences in an entirely new way, while staying faithful to the story of the 1985 classic. The musical introduced original songs alongside Alan Silvestri and Glenn Ballard's new score, while retaining beloved musical moments such as The Power of Love, Earth Angel, Johnny B. Good, and Back in Time. The result was a spectacular theatrical adaptation that captured the humour, heart and excitement of the original film. And it really did, because I actually saw this. One of the production's greatest challenges was recreating the DeLorean Time Machine on stage. Tony Award-winning scenic and costume designer Tim Hatley spent more than a year developing the show's ambitious set, knowing that the famous car would become the centerpiece of the production. Rather than using a real vehicle, Hatley and his team carried out a detailed 3D scan of the original DeLorean before building a specifically designed stage version to better suit the theatre environment. The replica was constructed at approximately 90% of the size of the real car, while carefully preserving every iconic detail, ensuring it remained instantly recognisable to fans. Although slightly smaller than the original, the stage DeLorean was an engineering marvel in its own right. Built around a steel frame with a fiberglass body, the vehicle was packed with hidden technology including speakers, lighting systems, batteries, CO2 effects, and complex mechanical components. Despite its limited interior space, the design still allowed both Marty and Doc to perform inside of the vehicle while creating the illusion of a fully functioning time machine. Every inch of the car served a practical purpose, making it one of the most technically sophisticated props ever built for a stage musical. Bringing the DeLorean to life required more than simply placing it on stage. Though, through a combination of advanced automation, projection mapping, lighting effects, rigging, and carefully choreographed stagecraft, audiences witnessed the car accelerate through time, seemingly defying gravity during its most memorable moments. Early concepts even considered suspending a balloon-supported version of the DeLorean above the stage, but the creative team ultimately developed an even more ambitious solution. The result was a breathtaking theatrical illusion that recreated the excitement of the film while taking full advantage of the possibilities of a live performance. Following its successful run in Manchester, London's Adelphi Theatre, and Broadway's Winter Garden Theatre, Back to the Future the musical expanded internationally, with touring productions across North America and other countries. Critics praised its combination of nostalgia, cutting-edge stage technology, and energetic performances, while longtime fans appreciated the respect shown to the original film by transforming one of cinema's most famous cars into a living, moving stage spectacle. The musical proved that the adventures of Marty, McFly and Doc Brown could continue to captivate audiences in an entirely new medium, ensuring that the legacy of Back to the Future remains as timeless as ever. Chapter 8. Your future is whatever you make it, so make it a good one. In 2025, Universal officially announced plans to build its first European theme park and resort in Bedfordshire, England, with an expected opening in 2031. The announcement immediately sparked widespread speculation among theme park enthusiasts over which franchises would be represented. While properties such as Jurassic Park, James Bond and Paddington were frequently mentioned as likely candidates, one of the biggest talking points quickly became the possible return of Back to the Future. More than 3 decades after the original attraction debuted, fans began imagining how the beloved time travel franchise could once again become a major part of a Universal Parks experience. The excitement surrounding Back to the Future was fueled by the franchise's enduring popularity. Since the original 1985 film, the series has expanded beyond the trilogy through animated television, video games, comics, a Broadway and West End musical, and previous theme park attractions. Many fans believe that the opening of a brand new Universal resort presents the perfect opportunity to introduce a modern attraction inspired by Hill Valley. Whether through a fully themed land, a state-of-the-art roller coaster, or an entirely new adventure featuring Doc Brown and the DeLorean Time Machine. Adding to the speculation was a fan-created concept from the fellow British YouTube channel Digital Dan, which imagined an ambitious Back to the Future roller coaster for the proposed British resort. The concept envisioned guests entering a full-scale recreation of Hill Valley before boarding DeLorean-inspired ride vehicles capable of reaching the famous speed of 88 miles per hour. According to the concept, the attraction would feature towering launches, twisting inversions, and a dramatic vertical spike reaching approximately 95 meters, about 310 feet, potentially making it the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the United Kingdom. Although entirely fictional, the impressive animation quickly spread across social media and generated enormous excitement among fans. Despite the growing rumours, Universal has repeatedly emphasised that no attractions have yet been officially confirmed for the Bedfordshire resort. The company has stated that the project remains in its planning stages, and that details regarding rides, themed lands and experiences will only be announced after the necessary approvals have been secured. As a result, every rumoured attraction, including Back to the Future, remains purely speculative. Nevertheless, the franchise's long association with Universal continues to make it one of the most frequently discussed possibilities whenever the new park is mentioned. At the same time, rumours have continued to circulate that Back to the Future could return to Universal's existing parks in the United States. Some reports have suggested the former Fast and Furious supercharged attraction at Universal Orlando Resort could eventually be reimagined with a Back to the Future theme, effectively reviving the spirit of the original simulator ride that closed in 2007. While no official announcements have been made, the idea has generated considerable excitement among long-time fans, eager to see Doc Brown and the DeLorean return to Universal in a modern attraction. Interest in the franchise has only continued to grow as Back to the Future celebrated its 40th anniversary with special theatrical re-releases and new home video editions. The anniversary reminded audiences of the series' lasting cultural impact and introduced the films to a new generation of viewers. Whether through a brand new attraction in the United States, revival of a classic ride elsewhere, or an entirely original themed land, many fans hope that the adventures of Marty, McFly and Doc Brown will once again become a permanent part of the Universal theme park experience. Until Universal reveals its future plans, however, enthusiasts can only speculate, and as Doc Brown might say, they'll simply have to wait for the future to arrive.
Oh, great Scott! You meet me back here in the same location you saw me at the start of the video. And if you've learnt anything from today's documentary on Back to the Future, let us know down in the comments below, as next time we're getting a nice hat and a whip, another famous franchise. See you later, everybody.